Does this lure in more institutional players? Does this mean that this is almost a safer space to get into now?
Absolutely, and you can see that in terms of overall market sentiment. So CoinShares published a very interesting report this morning that showed the outflow of dollars into crypto products, institutional products, was at its highest similar to March during the banking crisis. And so overall sentiment was really negative leading into this news. And I think to all the points mentioned before, the market was really caught off guard in terms of the announcement this morning. It's really great. It changes the sentiment in the U.S. and globally for institutions around this is moving forward. We're actually going to get the guidelines we've been looking for in terms of how to approach the space at large.
And go global for a moment with us, because look, other places have spot Bitcoin ETFs. What has been the US's issue with it? What more broadly have you felt is different with the SEC versus other regulators?
At a high level, it's really the different players that are in the space today, whether it is on the fact of the SEC working closely with Coinbase, and obviously there's a lawsuit there that they're working through the SEC and Grayscale. There's a bunch of intermediaries today that the SEC is working with, and it is just simply unclear in terms of how the SEC is going to regulate versus them pushing out a rule book or Congress having to just take the step and make guidelines for everyone in the United States to follow. And unfortunately, even if you compare to the UK with MiCA, we just haven't seen that level of proactive guidelines in the United States.
Judge Naomi Rao, who was on the appeals panel, pointed out that specifically the SEC's treatment of Grayscale was arbitrary and capricious because they hadn't treated others in the same way. And our colleague Katie Greifeld, who leads our ETF coverage, points out that this is just one thing that might happen this week. There's a deadline Friday for BlackRock. There's a 21 shares in Invesco deadline Saturday. What happens next to your mind?
Yeah, again, I think the market was just simply caught off guard. We were expecting this GBTC news to come out in the last 2 weeks. And so on the backs of macro, on the backs of Jackson Hole, you're just seeing that the market was not expecting this news, and overall sentiment was negative. Implied volatility was at its lowest. And so really what that sets us up for is a very volatile Q3 and Q4. We're probably going to see the next 3 months have a lot of activity between these different players. And listen, the legal bandwidth of BlackRock and Fidelity, as well as ARK, is going to be far, far larger than some of the crypto players. And we will likely see those conversations get pushed further than what we've seen to date. So it's very exciting for the United States.
Who benefits the most from this? If an ETF's approved, beyond the ETF provider themselves, who wins?
Institutional investors. And really, the reason they win is institutional investors are looking for regulated paths to get exposure to these assets in structures that they're used to in traditional finance. And that just hasn't been available yet today in the United States. And so really, this is a huge push forward for us. We've always said that the institutional wave is coming, but it really can't come until we have very simple, regulated products available in the market. And this is a bit push forward towards that.
And that's exactly what Fractal's all about. I mean, a spot ETF is pretty basic at best, a futures ETF too. You're thinking about options offerings. You're thinking about how you can get basically traditional finance, the TradFi world, to see what they can do in normal finance and bring it to crypto. How easier or slower process is that?
That's exactly right. It's a slow process only because it's taken so long for us to get this to this first base with the spot ETF. But to your point, once we get the spot ETF, it's going to be so much clearer for us to be able to give access. You saw Coinbase, CME, who are all able to trade futures in the United States. And that took a long time for that to happen as well in the States. And so you're able to see a path forward for us to really be able to offer not only options, but structured products in a regulated way that institutions are comfortable getting access to. It's really very exciting.